Anthony, can we, unfortunately for all of you at the microphones, I think I'm going to have to make you the last question. We'll try to sneak one more in. Yes.
So I think there's a great debate on sustainable development and sustainable change. You wake up one morning and there's a letter in your mailbox that says if you donate $10, you can buy a mosquito net and potentially save a life in Africa. And 2 days later, you pick up an Economist and there are 3 articles that argue that $10 is taking African jobs that could have potentially existed and no longer exist because we're just sending over the mosquito nets. The question that I have is, as lead change makers, how do you approach that, for lack of a better phrase, trade-off? And for us who maybe aren't able yet to actually get on the ground in Africa, make some of these decisions, but are able to take out a checkbook and write a $10 or a $50 check, what advice do you have for us so that we're making sustainable decisions?
I'll start. Sure, why not? You got to do your research and know where your $10 goes. Yeah. There are ways to find out. You also have to trust, and you also have to remind yourself that you are living in a world, in a place of such excess, and what $10 to you and what $10 is in Africa is huge. I think there is a degree of trust you have to throw in there.
If I could do a selfish pitch for the interaction community. Here's the community that has the highest standards of any nonprofit community in the United States. They've been developed over 25 years. If you don't reach those standards, you're asked to leave the association. It is quite hard. It takes organizations 2 to 3 years to get in. And yet they're very small organizations to very big ones. There's every faith group around the country. It reflects the diversity of our country coming together. And because development or humanitarian or work to adapt to climate change happens so far away, sure, this is a community that has actually had to focus on its own accountability far more so than the community you see down the road because you could visit that local church. And then it really does come down to which institution, which organization. But your core of your question, the idea that a bed net is bought and shipped, that is not the core of how most nonprofits do their business. You're trying to find the local supplier, the local capacity to do that. That said, there are times when resources need to come from afar.
Yep.
I think you've got your finger on what we all know is a horrible problem that we're embarrassed about, that most of the money does go to the contractors. That's why people have such little faith in our official, and not just ours, but many of the bilateral institutions. And it's a structural problem. The government at least has a nervous system, but who does it connect to? It connects to people here, not people in Tanzania. So that's a deep structural problem. Let me challenge you on another point. Mohammed Yunus isn't an American, but we're benefiting a lot from his ideas. These national boundaries are less and less relevant. We should be willing to take ideas wherever they come from. And I would use a simple metaphor in terms of where to invest. You do have to give fish sometimes. It's better to help people learn how to fish. But it's a lot better, especially in a world with logarithmic change, to help people figure out how to change the structure of the fishing industry so it works a lot better.
Thank you.
You know, if I might just say, I mean, I would make a distinction between, again, the proven strategic solutions and the symbols that people are able to relate to. And when I began this work, I was working in Thailand and Malaysia and South Korea and Taiwan, and they had statistics like Sub-Saharan Africa has, and they don't have malaria any longer, they don't have malnutrition any longer. I mean, in fact, we know how to solve these problems, and it's not new science or new social engineering, in my belief. But in order to do it, you need people's support, and you need political will. And in general, most people don't want to know, I don't want to know how the computers in my car work. I count on somebody to do it. Most people don't want to have to understand the epidemiology of malaria resistance and so on and so forth. So you have to provide people with something that they can relate to. And I think, generally speaking, and if I would interpret your question, that's what's going on between, a simple symbol of a larger process.
I promised each of you a concluding soundbite opportunity to wrap up here. Let me do it maybe in the form of a question like, the future of our mutual success depends on blank or something like that. But each of you, a concluding word or two. Charlie.
I'd go to the technology and the opportunities that technology has to bring people together, to create solidarity and to reduce costs.
Sam.
It depends on you having a voice and you raising that voice, and as you act in your corporation or your university, to recognize that you should never act alone, that you need to partner with others.
Bill.
We live at a moment of major historical discontinuity, which is a huge opportunity. If you see it, you know what to do. And so the first thing is to please understand this moment in history. Finally, the rule of the elites is over, and everyone has to be a change maker. That means that every young person has to develop different skills. If you have a 15-year-old friend who is not practicing change making, that's much worse than if she is not mastering math. If you're a manager, you've got to manage differently or your institution is toast. This is really a fundamental moment in history, and you got to see it. But you can, and thank you in advance.
Anthony.
Just reinforcing the simple idea that we are a giant chain, and wherever the weakest link is, we need to focus. And I think it's all pretty clear to everybody here where the weak links are in our globe now, and that it is very possible and well worth reinforcing that individual action makes a difference.
This was an extraordinarily good and vigorous conversation. Please join me in thanking our panel for this.